Good evening. This is meteorologist Mike Carmen of America's Weather Streaming Channel coming to you from the White Mountains of northern New Hampshire. It is Sunday, December 10th, 2023, and we have a significant storm system setting up for the northeastern United States, which is going to bring some heavy rain, some high winds, and even some snowfall to various locations across New England. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at what we can expect out of this system as it passes today through most of the day on Monday. So currently, we are experiencing rainfall across most of the eastern seaboard. This is as of about 6 o'clock Eastern time. And that rainfall is going to continue into the overnight hours and intensify in many locations as the storm system intensifies. So in response to the coming weather, the National Weather Service has issued a fair amount of watches and warnings. You can see a very colorful map here, which unfortunately for a current hazard map means there's a lot of hazards we can expect out of the storm. So to the north and to the west, you can see some of those purple and pink shadings. In those counties, we're expecting more in the way of wintry weather out of this system. So heavy snowfall in those areas, and then further to the south and to the east, closer to the coast, where our temperature is going to be a little bit warmer for a little bit longer. We're expecting more in the way of rainfall, so those green shadings indicate flood watches up for everywhere from Washington, D.C. all the way north to northern Maine. And then along the coasts, those yellow shadings, kind of yellow-orangish shadings, indicate high wind warnings, where we could see some very high wind gusts, especially into Monday and Monday night, as the storm system intensifies just offshore and rides up the coastline. So now let's take a look and see what we can expect out of this system. And so we're going to take a look, and I'm going to actually go back in time here a little bit to where we're currently starting. So this is about the current state of things in this map here. And you can see there's rainfall spread across most of the Northeast. A little bit of blues mixing in, which is snowfall expected. And most of that is in higher elevations at this time, but you'll see we're going to go forward in time, hour by hour, into the night here. And you can see those blues start to work in a little bit more. So you'll notice snowfall becoming more widespread as that cold air works in behind the system. The other thing you'll probably notice from this map is more of those darker greens and oranges and yellows indicating heavier rainfall rates as well. As we get into the overnight hours, we could definitely see some very significant rainfall, and that's why those flood watches are up. Expect some of those to be upgraded to flood warnings as the rainfall continues through the night. And then, of course, areas that have received snow melt will add to that hazard as well. This is now getting into early Friday morning around sunrise time. At this time, you can see the center of that low pressure system is just south of Connecticut, just offshore of Long Island. And some very heavy rainfall rates. You can see the storm system is intensifying at this point, and then a lot more of that cold air working in behind it. It's pulling down that cold air as it intensifies, so a lot more widespread snowfall you can see through most of the Adirondacks into Vermont and the Green Mountains, and then sort of the northern fringe of New Hampshire and Maine as well. Although, depending on there's a lot of warm air at work here that's being dragged up from the south. So maybe some areas that would expect more in the way of snowfall this time of year in northern New England are going to see mostly rain out of this system. And so you can see that low pressure center indicated by this L here tracks just south of Boston. And this is now getting into sort of mid-morning on Monday, and that rain continues. And that snowfall continues on the north end of things. And this is now getting into sort of Monday afternoon. The precipitation starts to clear out by the afternoon as the storm system sort of races off off to the northeast there. The other thing you'll notice is these lines here. The isobars are getting more tightly packed, indicating, well, one, that the storm system is intensifying, but also stronger winds closer to the surface. So we're going to take a look and see what that looks like here in just a second. But the first thing we'll take a look at is the expected snowfall totals across the northeastern U.S. And you can see some pretty significant snowfall is in store. Some areas could, especially in northern Vermont and in the Adirondacks, and perhaps some places in the White Mountains of New Hampshire as well, could see on the order of 8 to 12 inches, especially those higher elevations where it's going to be a little bit colder and that warm air won't be quite as significant. But you can see a pretty sharp drop off in those a pretty sharp drop off in those significant snowfall totals. Again, sharp delineation there because of the strong warm air advection that is going to be happening. Warm air being transported pretty far north. So even some places far north into Maine are going to see mostly rain out of this and not a lot of snow, surprisingly. And so for those places that aren't going to see snowfall out of this, this is what we're expecting as far as total liquid precipitation across most of the Northeast. And you can see areas that are going to see most of the rainfall out of this are going to be sort of interior Connecticut and Massachusetts, and working its way up into northern Maine as well. And you can see some of these areas, again, these are numbers in inches of expected liquid precipitation here. And some areas could see in excess of 2 to 3 inches. Even some places in interior Connecticut and Massachusetts could be getting up to 4 inches of rainfall in a pretty short amount of time. We're talking 24 hours or less. So this is certainly going to be enough to cause some flooding hazards, perhaps some flash flooding in those areas. So certainly something to keep an eye on as this system evolves, especially overnight tonight into early Monday morning, where it looks like that's when the heaviest of this rainfall is going to be occurring in these locations. The last hazard we're going to take a look at is, of course, wind speed. Again, as this system evolves and moves offshore, it is going to intensify, so that will lead to some stronger wind gusts. And even in interior sections, we could see some maximum wind gusts here. Again, this is in miles per hour, in excess of 30 miles per hour or so in interior sections. Higher, of course, in the higher elevations of, say, the White Mountains of New Hampshire and into the Green Mountains as well. But the other place that's going to see even higher wind gusts are coastal sections closer to the center of the storm. And some of these areas, some of these yellow colors indicate wind gusts of over 60 miles per hour. So Cape Cod, southern Connecticut and Rhode Island, and far down East Maine there could see wind gusts in excess of 60. Even some of these darker yellows hinting at perhaps 65, 70 mile per hour wind gusts in places right along the coast. So definitely a big hazard with the storm. Between the rain and the wind, I would certainly expect some widespread power outages across coastal sections and even a little bit further inland as well. In some places that did receive snowfall from last week's storm, and all that snow is going to be melting, making the trees much heavier. That could also, combined with the wind, that could also lead to some power outages as well. So in summary, that's what we're looking at over the next 24 hours in New England. A lot of rain, a lot of wind, and then for interior sections, sort of to the north and to the west, especially into Vermont and into the Adirondacks in upper New York State, and even northern New Hampshire, north of the White Mountains, we could expect a good amount of snowfall out of the system. So sort of the tale of two storms there, with the warm temperatures and the rain to the south, and the colder temperatures and the heavier snowfall to the north. But again, this storm is going to be pulling out pretty quickly, so it will be a distant memory by Tuesday, and actually looks like we're going to get some nicer weather coming in for the rest of the week up in northern New England here in the wake of this storm. Thanks again for watching. This is, again, meteorologist Mike Carmen with America's Weather Streaming Channel, and have a good evening and stay dry.